The mining station Kepler 442b hung in the void like a broken metal flower, its damaged hull bleeding atmosphere into space. Emergency lights flickered across its surface, casting eerie shadows on the asteroid field that surrounded it. The station had been humanity's furthest outpost, a testament to their stubborn refusal to acknowledge limits. Now it was a tomb. Marcus Chun floated through the station's central corridor, his magnetic boots clicking against the metal deck plates with each careful step. The artificial gravity had failed 3 hours ago, along with most other systems. His breathing echoed inside his helmet, the only sound in the oppressive silence that had settled over what was once a bustling facility housing 200 souls. Now, there were only 17 humans left alive. The attack had come without warning. The hegemony's fleet had dropped out of hyperspace like metallic vultures, their ships bristling with weapons that humanity had never seen before. The station's defenses, primitive by galactic standards, had lasted exactly 14 minutes against the alien assault. Marcus pushed off from a wall and glided toward the emergency shelter where the survivors had gathered. Through the reinforced viewport, he could see the hegemony ships maintaining their positions around the station like sharks circling wounded prey. Their vessels were beautiful in a terrifying way, sleek, organic curves that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. The aliens called themselves the Vorthack Hegemony, and they had made their intentions clear through their universal translator broadcasts. They wanted the children. The message had been simple and chilling. Surrender the young ones, and the adults may live as servants. Resist, and all will perish. The hegemony had given them 12 hours to comply. That was 11 hours ago. Marcus reached the shelter and cycled through the airlock. Inside, the remaining survivors huddled together in the cramped space. Engineers, miners, scientists, and support staff, all of them bearing the hollow look of people who had watched their world end. Among them were 5 children, ranging in age from 6 to 14 years old. They were the reason the hegemony had come. Dr. Sarah Williams, the station's chief xenobiologist, looked up as Marcus entered. Her face was pale, her usually neat brown hair disheveled from stress. "Any word from the fleet?" she asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Marcus shook his head. "Long-range communications are still down. The hegemony ships are jamming everything except local frequencies." He paused, watching the children who sat together in the corner, their young faces trying to process the incomprehensible nightmare that had become their reality. Even if Earth knew what was happening, the nearest fleet is 6 weeks away. "Then, we're on our own," said Thomas Reeves, the station's security chief. His right arm was in a makeshift sling, blood seeping through the bandages from where shrapnel had caught him during the initial assault. Despite his injury, his hand rested on his sidearm. Ready for a fight he knew he couldn't win. The children's parents were among the survivors, desperate mothers and fathers who clutched their young ones close, whispering reassurances they didn't believe themselves. The hegemony's reputation preceded them across the galaxy. They were collectors, taking children from dozens of species to serve in their vast empire as soldiers, servants, and worse. The children were never seen again. Marcus moved to the center of the group, his mind racing through possibilities. As the station's logistics coordinator, he was used to solving problems with limited resources. But this was beyond any challenge he had ever faced. "We need to face facts," he said quietly. "The station's weapons are offline. Life support is failing. And we have maybe an hour of air left in this shelter. What are you suggesting?" Dr. Williams asked, though her expression showed she feared the answer. "The hegemony gave us 12 hours. Maybe if we know." The voice came from Maria Santos, mother of 8-year-old Carlos. Her dark eyes blazed with fierce determination. "I want to hand my boy over to those monsters. I'd rather we all die fighting than live knowing we condemned our children to slavery." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the group. These weren't soldiers, but they were parents. Marcus understood their resolve, even as his rational mind calculated their chances of survival at effectively 0. A new sound broke through their discussion, a rhythmic tapping coming through the shelter walls. Everyone froze, listening. The tapping came in patterns, almost like code. Thomas frowned, pressing his ear to the wall. "That's not random," he said. "Someone's trying to communicate." The tapping stopped, then resumed with a different pattern. Long, short, long, long, short. Dr. Williams gasped. "That's ancient Morse code. Ha, women." Hope flickered in the survivor's eyes. Another human, somewhere else on the station, was alive and trying to reach them. But who? The emergency protocols had accounted for all survivors, and the shelter sensors showed no other life signs anywhere on the station. The tapping continued, spelling out a message that made Marcus's blood run cold. Hegemony boarding parties incoming. Stay hidden. We'll extract children safely. Trust me. Extract the children? Maria whispered, pulling Carlos closer. Who is that? How can they possibly? Her question was cut off by a new sound, the unmistakable hiss of cutting torches working on the station's hull. The Hegemony was coming aboard. Through the shelter's external cameras, they could see the boarding craft latched onto the station like metallic leeches. Streams of armored figures poured through the breaches, moving with the fluid grace of experienced warriors. The Vorthak were humanoid but clearly alien, taller than humans with elongated limbs and heads that seemed too large for their bodies. Their armor gleamed with an oily iridescence, and energy weapons crackled in their grasp. They're sweeping deck by deck, Thomas reported, monitoring the security feeds. Professional search pattern. They'll be here in 20 minutes. The children huddled closer to their parents. 14-year-old Jessica Kim, the oldest of the group, stood up with surprising composure. If someone's going to try to save us, we should trust them, she said. Staying here just means we'll all be captured together. Marcus admired the girl's courage, but the practical part of his mind rejected the idea. We don't know who's sending those messages. It could be a trap, or someone who's lost touch with reality. There's no way one person could extract 5 children from station crawling with hegemony troops. The tapping resumed, more urgent now. Maintenance, Shaft 7. Access panel behind water recycler. Come now. Dr. Williams checked her tablet, pulling up the station schematics. Shaft 7 connects to the lower engineering decks. It's one of the few areas the hegemony hasn't reached yet. Because it's a dead end, Thomas pointed out. Those shafts lead to the reactor core. There's no escape route down there. Maybe escape isn't the plan, said Dr. Williams thoughtfully. The reactor is still functional. If someone had access to the maintenance systems, they could potentially an explosion rock the shelter, throwing everyone to the floor. Emergency lighting bathed them in red as the structure groaned under the impact. Through the viewports, they could see hegemony troops working on the shelter's outer door with plasma cutters. Decision time, Marcus said grimly. We can surrender the children and hope the hegemony keeps their word about sparing the adults, or we can trust whoever's been sending those messages. The cutting outside intensified, sparks flying as the alien weapons bit through the reinforced metal. They had minutes at most. Maria Santos made the choice for all of them. She kissed Carlos on the forehead and whispered something in his ear, then looked at the other parents. Our children deserve a chance, she said simply, even if it's a small one. One by one, the other parents nodded. Dr. Williams quickly gathered the children, explaining in calm, reassuring tones that they were going on a special adventure and needed to be very brave and very quiet. The children, sensing the gravity of the situation, followed without complaint. Marcus and Thomas worked together to remove the access panel behind the water recycling unit. The maintenance shaft beyond was narrow and dark, barely wide enough for an adult to crawl through. I'll go first, Marcus said. If it's a trap, at least the rest of you can try to bargain with the hegemony. He squeezed into the shaft, his suit lights illuminating the metal tunnel ahead. The shaft sloped downward, following the station's internal structure toward the engineering decks. Behind him, he could hear Dr. Williams guiding the children into the tunnel, their young voices whispering questions and reassurances. The shaft branched several times, but the path was marked with small scratches in the metal, fresh cuts that someone had made recently to guide the way. Marcus followed the marks, crawling steadily downward as the sounds of the hegemony breach grew fainter behind them. After what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, Marcus reached a larger junction where he could stand upright. The children emerged one by one from the shaft, followed by Dr. Williams. They were in the lower engineering section now, surrounded by the massive pipes and conduits that fed the station's reactor. Hello, Marcus. The voice came from the shadows, speaking in perfect, unaccented English. A figure stepped into the light, human in shape but wearing some kind of advanced suit that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. The helmet was retracted, revealing the face of a man in his 30s with dark hair and intense green eyes. "Who are you?" Marcus demanded, instinctively moving between the stranger and the children. The man smiled, but there was something cold and calculating in his expression. "My name is Lieutenant Commander David Rourke, Human Navy Special Operations. Though officially, I don't exist." He gestured to his suit, which Marcus now realized was technology far beyond anything he had seen. "This is a prototype stealth infiltration system. I've been tracking hegemony slave raids for the past 3 years." Dr. Williams stepped forward. "The human Navy doesn't have ships this far out." "How did you—" "The Navy doesn't," Rourke interrupted. "But certain elements within the government have been developing unofficial responses to the hegemony threat." His gaze moved to the children, and his expression softened slightly. "The important thing is that I'm here now, and I'm going to get these kids to safety." "How?" Marcus asked. "The station is surrounded. Even if you have a ship, the hegemony will blow it apart the moment it moves." Rourke's smile returned, colder than before. "Who said anything about leaving the station?" Before anyone could ask what he meant, alarms began blaring throughout the engineering section. Emergency lights strobed as automated voices announced, "Reactor core breach detected. All personnel evacuate immediately." Through the deck plating, they could feel vibrations as the hegemony troops rushed toward the shelter, only to find it empty. Angry alien voices echoed through the station's corridors as the search expanded. "What did you do?" Dr. Williams whispered, her face pale. Rourke checked a device on his wrist, nodding in satisfaction. "I accessed the reactor's maintenance protocols and initiated a controlled instability in the magnetic containment field. The hegemony sensors will read it as a critical malfunction, the kind that could turn this entire asteroid field into a radioactive debris cloud." "Could turn it into?" Marcus repeated. "You mean it's not actually going to explode?" "Not unless I wanted to," Rourke replied calmly. "The beauty of human engineering. We always build in manual overrides. The hegemony doesn't know that. To them, this station just became a ticking bomb, and their precious cargo is somewhere inside." The children stayed close to Dr. Williams, their eyes wide as they tried to understand what was happening. Jessica Kim, the oldest, stepped forward with remarkable composure. "Are you really going to save us?" she asked. Rourke knelt down to her level, his expression gentling. "I'm going to try, Jessica, but I need all of you to be very brave and follow my instructions exactly. Can you do that?" The girl nodded solemnly, and the other children murmured their agreement. Marcus had to admit he was impressed by their courage, even as his mind raced with questions about this mysterious operative and his impossible mission. Through the station's hull, they could hear the hegemony ships repositioning themselves, moving to a safer distance from the apparently unstable reactor. Rourke monitored their movements on his wrist device, which seemed to have access to sensor feeds that shouldn't have existed. "Phase 1 complete," he said with satisfaction. "The hegemony fleet is pulling back to minimum safe distance. They won't risk losing their boarding parties, but they also can't afford to let their prizes escape." "So what's Phase 2? Marcus asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. Rourke stood up, his expression becoming businesslike again. "We make them think the children died in the reactor breach, while actually keeping them alive and hidden until rescue arrives." "That's impossible," Dr. Williams protested. "The radiation alone would be fatal to most species," Rourke agreed. "But humans have a remarkable ability to survive in hostile environments. Our biology is more adaptable than the hegemony realizes." He gestured to his suit. "This technology doesn't just provide stealth. It can create a localized environmental field, enough to keep the children alive in conditions that would kill a Vorthack instantly." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's failing life support. "You're talking about hiding in the reactor core itself." "Exactly." Rourke's smile was sharp as a blade. "The one place on this station the hegemony will never look, because they assume nothing could survive there. They'll search every other compartment, find no trace of the children, and eventually conclude they died in the containment breach." The plan was audacious, insane, and possibly brilliant. It was also their only hope. Heavy footsteps echoed through the engineering section as hegemony troops began their systematic search. Rourke gestured toward a maintenance hatch that led deeper into the reactor assembly. "Time to go. Stay close, stay quiet, and remember, humans don't give up their young without a fight." As they prepared to descend into the heart of the station, Marcus couldn't help but wonder who David Rourke really was and what other secrets humanity was keeping in its war against the hegemony. But those questions would have to wait. Right now, 5 children's lives hung in the balance, and a mysterious operative was their only hope of survival. The reactor chamber awaited, humming with barely contained power that could either hide them from the aliens above or incinerate them all in seconds. Marcus took a deep breath and followed Rourke into the depths, hoping that humanity's reputation for impossible survival was more than just galactic legend. Behind them, the station groaned under the weight of its own deception, while somewhere above, alien hunters prowled through empty corridors, searching for prey that had vanished into the one place they would never think to look. The real test was just beginning. The reactor chamber was a cathedral of contained chaos. Massive magnetic field generators hummed with power, while streams of superheated plasma danced behind layers of reinforced containment shielding. The air itself seemed to vibrate with barely restrained energy, and the temperature gauges on Marcus's suit showed readings that would cook unprotected human flesh in seconds. Yet somehow they were alive. Rourke's advanced suit projected a shimmering field around their small group, creating a pocket of breathable atmosphere and tolerable temperature in the heart of the station's most dangerous section. The children huddled close together, their eyes wide as they watched the alien beauty of the reactor's plasma flows through the protective barriers. "It's like being inside a star," whispered 10-year-old Amy Patterson, her voice filled with wonder rather than fear. "Dr. Williams checked her handheld scanner, frowning at the readings. "The radiation levels here should be lethal. How is your suit compensating for trade secrets?" Rourke interrupted, monitoring his wrist device as hegemony troops moved through the engineering section above them. "Let's just say human technology has made some interesting advances that haven't made it into the public sphere yet." Marcus studied the mysterious operative, noting details he had missed before. Rourke's movements were too precise, too economical. His situational awareness bordered on supernatural. And that suit, the way it seemed to flow and adapt to its environment, suggested technology that was decades beyond anything Marcus had seen. "You're not just Navy, are you?" Marcus asked quietly. "Special operations don't get equipment like this." Rourke's green eyes fixed on him with laser intensity. "What makes you think that?" "Because I used to be military myself," Marcus replied. 15 years with the Colonial Marine Corps before I went civilian. I know what our best gear looks like, and this isn't it." For a moment, something like respect flickered across Rourke's face. "Observant." "Yes, I work for an organization that operates in the spaces between the official military branches. We handle threats that require creative solutions." Above them, alien voices echoed through the engineering section as hegemony troops conducted their search. The universal translators built into the station's systems converted their clicking, chittering language into cold, emotionless words. Thermal scans negative on Deck 7. Life sign detectors show no organic presence in engineering compartments. Radiation levels in reactor section consistent with containment breach. Unlikely any human survived in that area. Rourke smiled grimly as he listened. Predictable. The Vorthak are methodical, but they lack imagination. They can't conceive of anyone willingly hiding in a place this dangerous. 6-year-old Carlos Santos tugged on Dr. Williams's sleeve. "Why do the monsters want us?" he asked in a small voice. Dr. Williams glanced at Rourke, unsure how to answer. Rourke knelt down to the boy's level, his expression becoming gentler. "They think human children are special, Carlos. They think they can use you to make themselves stronger. But they're wrong about one very important thing." "What's that?" Carlos asked. "They think humans are just another species to be conquered. They don't understand that we're survivors. We've climbed out of caves and conquered our own planet, traveled to the stars, and made homes in places that should have killed us. And we never, ever abandon our own." Jessica Kim, the 14-year-old who had shown such composure earlier, spoke up. "My father says the hegemony has been taking children from colonies for years. Why hasn't Earth stopped them?" Rourke's jaw tightened. "Because Earth's government likes to pretend that what happens on the frontier doesn't affect the core worlds. They think they can negotiate with the hegemony, find some diplomatic solution." His voice carried bitter anger. "Some of us disagree with that approach." Marcus was beginning to understand. "You're part of some kind of black ops program. Unauthorized retaliation against hegemony raids. Unauthorized by the official government." "Yes," Rourke confirmed. "But there are elements within the military and intelligence communities who believe humanity needs to send a stronger message." The hegemony respects strength and fears consequences. So far, they've faced neither from us. Dr. Williams looked troubled. You're talking about starting a war. The war already started, Rourke replied flatly. The hegemony declared it when they began taking our children. We're just finally fighting back. A new sound reached them through the reactor chamber's walls, the distinctive whine of hegemony transport engines. Through Rourke's sensor feeds, they could see alien shuttles docking with the station, disgorging more troops and what appeared to be specialized equipment. Search and salvage teams, Rourke observed, studying the feeds. They're bringing in deep scan technology, the kind used for recovering valuable cargo from disaster sites. Looking for bodies, Marcus realized. Our bodies specifically. The hegemony has invested significant resources in this raid. They're not going to accept the loss of their prizes without confirmation. 8-year-old Timothy Chun, the youngest of the group, started to sniffle. The stress and fear were finally overwhelming his brave facade. Dr. Williams gathered him close, whispering soothing words, but Marcus could see the strain on all the children's faces. How long do we have to stay here? Amy asked. Rourke checked his chronometer. The hegemony will spend at least 6 hours conducting a thorough search of the station. Then, another 2 hours analyzing the data to confirm their findings. After that, he paused, choosing his words carefully. After that, things get interesting. Define interesting, Marcus said. Once they're convinced the children are dead, the hegemony will likely withdraw most of their forces. They'll leave a small garrison to strip the station of valuable technology, but the main fleet will move on to their next target. Dr. Williams frowned. And then what? We're still trapped on a damaged station with failing life support. Rourke's smile returned, sharp and predatory. Then, we show them why taking human children is a very bad idea. Before anyone could ask what he meant, proximity alarms began sounding throughout the reactor chamber. The containment field flickered momentarily, causing everyone to freeze in terror. But Rourke remained calm, making minute adjustments to his suit's controls. Hegemony deep scanners, he explained. They're probing the reactor core with penetrating sensors. The containment field instability is interfering with their equipment, but we need to be careful. Too much disruption, and they might realize it's artificial. For the next several minutes, they endured wave after wave of sensor probes washing through the reactor chamber. Each pulse made the containment field shiver and sparked cascades of energy through the plasma conduits. The children pressed closer together, and Marcus found himself holding his breath each time the scanners swept over their hiding spot. Finally, the probing stopped. Through the station's comm system, they could hear hegemony officers conferring in their harsh, clicking language. Deep scans complete. No recoverable organic material detected in reactor section. Radiation degradation consistent with total biological breakdown. Conclusion: target specimens destroyed in containment breach. Mission parameters not met. Rourke nodded in satisfaction. Phase 2 complete. They're buying it. What happens when they figure out the breach was artificial? Dr. Williams asked. They won't, Rourke replied confidently. Human reactor technology is just advanced enough to seem primitive to them. They'll assume we built in safety systems that failed catastrophically. It fits their preconceptions about our engineering capabilities. Marcus had to admire the psychological warfare at play. The hegemony's technological superiority was also their weakness. They literally couldn't imagine humans being clever enough to fool them. As the hours passed, they could track the alien search teams moving through the station. Rourke's sensors showed hegemony troops systematically examining every compartment, every storage bay, every maintenance crawlway. They found the shelter where the survivors had hidden, discovered the access shaft the children had used to escape, and followed the trail all the way to the engineering section. But they never looked in the reactor core itself. Intellectual blindness, Rourke explained quietly as they watched the search teams work. The Vorthack are a logical species. They calculate probabilities and follow the most likely scenarios. The idea of voluntarily exposing children to lethal radiation doesn't compute for them. To be fair, it doesn't compute for me either, Marcus muttered. Carlos had fallen asleep against Dr. Williams's shoulder, exhausted by the day's trauma. The other children dozed fitfully, their young minds struggling to process their situation. Jessica remained awake, watching Rourke with curious eyes. You've done this before, she said. It wasn't a question. Rourke glanced at her, surprised by the girl's perception. What makes you say that? The way you talk about them. The hegemony. You know how they think, how they operate. You've studied them up close. Marcus looked at Rourke with new understanding. She's right. You didn't just happen to be in this sector when the raid occurred. You were following this fleet, weren't you? Rourke was quiet for a long moment, weighing how much to reveal. Finally, he nodded. The hegemony has been escalating their raids along the frontier. Larger fleets, better coordination, targeting specific types of colonies. This wasn't a random attack. They knew this station had children of the right ages. Someone gave them intelligence, Dr. Williams realized, her voice cold with fury. That's what we're trying to find out. There's a leak somewhere in the colonial administration, someone providing the hegemony with detailed information about our settlements. This raid was part of the investigation. Marcus felt sick. You used us as bait. The raid was going to happen anyway, Rourke said firmly. My presence here gave you a chance to save the children. Without me, they'd all be in hegemony holding cells right now. It was a harsh truth, but Marcus couldn't argue with it. The station's defenses had been woefully inadequate against the alien fleet. They'd had no hope of resistance without help. New activity on the sensors drew their attention. The main hegemony fleet was pulling back from the station, leaving only 2 smaller vessels in orbit. Through the feed, they could see alien workers beginning the process of stripping valuable equipment from the station's outer sections. Salvage phase, Rourke observed. They'll take what they can and then leave the station to drift. Standard hegemony operating procedure for failed raids. Fail? Dr. Williams asked. From their perspective, yes. They came for children and found none. Everything else is just scrap metal and raw materials. Jessica had been studying Rourke's equipment with keen interest. Your suit, it's not just human technology, is it? Rourke looked at her sharply. What makes you think that? My mom's a xenotechnician. She works with alien artifacts for the Colonial Survey. I've seen adaptive materials before, but nothing that responds like yours does. It's too smooth, too intuitive. Marcus was impressed by the girl's observation. She was right. There was something almost organic about the way Rourke's suit flowed and adapted to different conditions. Hybrid technology, Rourke admitted reluctantly. Human engineering principles combined with recovered alien materials. My organization has been reverse engineering hegemony equipment for years. Stolen equipment, Dr. Williams corrected. Liberated equipment, Rourke countered. Taken from raiders who were using it to hunt our people. I call that justice. The philosophical debate was interrupted by a change in the station's status. Emergency power was failing, and, with it, the artificial gravity in most sections. The reactor chamber's independent systems kept their area stable, but they could hear debris floating through the corridors above as the station slowly died around them. Almost time, Rourke said, checking his chronometer again. The hegemony salvage teams will finish their preliminary assessment in another hour. Then comes the fun part. Which is? Marcus asked, dreading the answer. Rourke's smile was cold and sharp. We show them what happens when you threaten human children on a human station powered by a human reactor designed by humans who very much believe in the principle of mutually assured destruction. Dr. Williams paled. You're going to blow up the station. Only after the children are safely away, Rourke assured her. My extraction plan has multiple phases. The explosion is just the final act. A message to the hegemony that their raids have consequences. Marcus stared at the mysterious operative, beginning to understand the true scope of what was happening. This wasn't just a rescue mission. It was a declaration of war. Rourke and his organization were done playing by the rules that allowed aliens to prey on human children with impunity. Above them, hegemony salvage teams continued their work, unaware that the station they were systematically looting had become their tomb. In a reactor chamber, 5 human children slept under the protection of technology that should not have existed, while their guardians planned an act of retaliation that would echo across the galaxy. The hegemony had come hunting for cubs and found a sleeping wolf instead. Now they were about to learn why humanity had never been conquered and why threatening their young was the worst mistake any species could make. The countdown to Phase 3 had begun. The station's death rattle echoed through the reactor chamber as another system failed somewhere in the superstructure above. Emergency lighting flickered and dimmed, casting eerie shadows across the massive containment vessels that held barely controlled stellar fire. In the artificial bubble of safety created by Rourke's technology, the children slept fitfully while their adult protectors maintained a tense vigil. Marcus checked his chronometer for what felt like the 100th time. They had been hiding in the reactor core for 6 hours now, and the hegemony salvage team showed no signs of finishing their work. Through Rourke's sensor feeds, they could watch alien workers systematically stripping away anything of value from the station's outer sections. "Patient bastards," Rourke muttered, studying the tactical display on his wrist unit. "Most species would have finished the salvage operation by now. The Vorthack are being thorough. Is that a problem?" Dr. Williams asked quietly, careful not to wake the children. "It complicates the extraction timeline," Rourke admitted. "My ride isn't equipped for an extended wait, and the longer we delay, the more likely they'll detect the energy signature." Marcus frowned. "Your ride? You never mentioned having a ship." "Because I don't." Rourke's smile was grim. "What I have is something much more interesting." Before Marcus could ask what he meant, new alarms began sounding through the station's failing communication system. The hegemony salvage crews were reacting to something, their orderly work pattern suddenly becoming agitated and urgent. Through the sensor feeds, they could see alien workers abandoning their positions and rushing toward their transport craft. Emergency signals flashed between the hegemony ships as they began rapid repositioning maneuvers. "What's happening?" Dr. Williams whispered. Rourke's expression shifted from grim satisfaction to genuine surprise. "That's not what I expected." He worked rapidly at his controls, trying to access broader sensor networks. "Something has the hegemony spooked. They're pulling back to defensive positions." The massive blast doors sealing the reactor chambers suddenly resonated with a deep, harmonic vibration. The sound was unlike anything produced by human or known alien technology, a resonance that seemed to penetrate matter itself and echo in their bones. "Contact," Rourke breathed, his eyes widening as he studied his readings. Multiple contacts coming out of hyperspace directly above the station. Jessica Kim, the oldest of the children, stirred awake at the sound. Her young face was alert and curious despite the exhaustion that shadowed her eyes. "What's that noise?" she asked. Before anyone could answer, the station's emergency broadcasting system crackled to life with a transmission unlike anything they had heard before. The voice that emerged was clearly not human, but it spoke perfect, unaccented English with a tone that carried absolute authority. "Attention Vorthack hegemony vessels. You are in violation of Treaty 77 Alpha. Release the captured children immediately and withdraw from the system or face the consequences." Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. Treaty 77 Alpha was classified at the highest levels of human government, a document that officially didn't exist. How did aliens know about it? Rourke's face had gone pale beneath his combat armor. "This is not supposed to happen," he muttered, working frantically at his controls. "The Kythera aren't supposed to be involved in human affairs." "The who?" Dr. Williams demanded. "The Kythera Collective," Rourke replied tersely. "Ancient alien civilization that claims neutrality in galactic conflicts. They're the ones who wrote most of the treaties that govern interspecies conduct. Problem is, they rarely enforce those treaties directly." The hegemony response came quickly, transmitted on open frequencies for all to hear. The alien commander's voice carried the arrogance typical of a species, but Marcus detected an underlying note of concern. "This is Fleet Admiral Zathkar of the Hegemony 3rd Expansion Fleet. We operate under legitimate salvage rights in unclaimed space. The humans violated containment protocols and lost their offspring through their own incompetence. We claim no prizes and seek only compensation for our losses." The Kythera response was immediate and devastating in its simplicity. Scanned records indicate deliberate targeting of civilian populations for slavery purposes. "Salvage claims rejected. You have 30 minutes to withdraw. This is your only warning." Through the reactor chamber's walls, they could feel the station shuddering as massive ships maneuvered in the space around them. The hegemony fleet was repositioning for what appeared to be a defensive formation, while new contacts appeared on Rourke's sensors. Ships with energy signatures unlike anything in human databases. "How many Kythera vessels?" Marcus asked, studying the tactical display over Rourke's shoulder. "3," Rourke replied, but his tone suggested that number was somehow significant. "That's unusual. The Kythera typically send single observers. 3 ships means they're taking this very seriously." Carlos Santos woke with a start, his young eyes wide with fear at the vibrations running through the station structure. Dr. Williams gathered him close, whispering reassurances, but the boy seemed to sense the tension in the adults around him. "Are the monsters leaving?" he asked hopefully. "We're about to find out," Marcus replied, watching as the hegemony fleet began what appeared to be preparation for departure. But something in their formation pattern troubled him. "Rourke, does that look like a withdrawal formation to you?" Rourke studied the tactical display more carefully, his expression darkening. "No, that's an attack formation. They're positioning for a first strike." Dr. Williams looked incredulous. "They're going to attack ships that just offered them safe passage? That's suicide." "The hegemony has never backed down from a direct challenge," Rourke explained. "Their entire culture is built around dominance hierarchies. Showing weakness to an outside force would undermine their internal power structure." The children were all awake now, sensing the change in atmosphere. Timothy Chun, barely 8 years old, pressed closer to Jessica Kim, who had somehow become their unofficial leader during this nightmare. Amy Patterson clutched the small stuffed animal she had managed to keep through the entire ordeal. "Will the new aliens help us?" Amy asked, her voice small but hopeful. Rourke hesitated before answering. "The Kythera operate according to very strict protocols. They're here because the hegemony violated interspecies law, but their response will be proportional." "Meaning?" Marcus pressed. "Meaning they'll stop the immediate threat, but they won't go out of their way to rescue human survivors. We're still on our own for getting out of here." The station suddenly lurched as something massive impacted its hull. Through the sensor feeds, they could see hegemony ships firing on the Kythera vessels with every weapon at their disposal. Energy beams that could vaporize entire city blocks struck the alien ships and simply disappeared. "Adaptive shielding," Rourke breathed in amazement. "They're not even trying to dodge. The Kythera shields are just absorbing everything the hegemony can throw at them." The Kythera response was swift and decisive. 3 pulses of violet energy emerged from the alien ships, each one targeting a different hegemony vessel. Where the beam struck, the alien warships simply ceased to exist, not destroyed or damaged, but completely unmade on a molecular level. "Dear God," Dr. Williams whispered, staring at the display. "What kind of weapons are those?" "Ones that make our arguments about human versus alien technology seem rather academic," Marcus replied grimly. The surviving hegemony ships began an immediate retreat, abandoning their salvage operations and fleeing toward the edge of the system. But the Kythera weren't finished. Another series of violet pulses reached out across space, and the fleeing ships vanished one by one until none remained. Silence settled over the system like a shroud. The Kythera ships moved with serene purpose toward the crippled station, their elegant forms flowing through space with a grace that suggested technology so advanced it bordered on magic. As they approached, new transmissions began flooding the station's communication systems. Not audio, but pure data streams that somehow bypassed normal translation protocols and communicated meaning directly. Rourke's equipment began displaying information that shouldn't have existed. Detailed scans of the station's interior, precise locations of all surviving life forms, and, most remarkably, complete technical specification for the reactor core and its current configuration. "They know we're here," Jessica observed with remarkable calm for a 14-year-old who had just watched alien ships erase each other from existence. "They know everything," Rourke corrected, studying the data streams with growing unease. "Medical data on all the children, complete personality profiles, genetic analysis." He paused, his face paling. "They know exactly who I am and why I'm here." A new transmission reached them, this one clearly directed at their specific location within the reactor core. The voice was the same one that had challenged the hegemony, but now it carried a different quality, ancient authority tempered with something that might have been compassion. "Human survivors in Reactor Chamber 7, you are safe from immediate harm. The Vorthak hegemony vessels have been neutralized. However, your station's life support systems are failing, and the reactor core is experiencing genuine instability due to prolonged manipulation of its containment protocols." Marcus looked at Rourke sharply. "Genuine instability? I thought you said I could control it," Rourke interrupted, working frantically at his suit's controls. "But 8 hours of induced fluctuations have created cascade effects I didn't anticipate. The containment field is actually beginning to fail." The Kythera transmission continued, seemingly aware of their conversation. Lieutenant Commander David Rourke, Your extraction plan is no longer viable. The reactor will experience critical containment failure in approximately 47 minutes. This event will be sufficient to sterilize the entire asteroid field. Dr. Williams grabbed Rourke's arm. You said you could control it. You said the children would be safe. I thought I could, Rourke replied, his composure finally cracking. The Kithira are right. I've pushed the system too far. We need to evacuate immediately. Ow, Marcus demanded. You said yourself your ride couldn't wait this long. The station's escape pods were destroyed in the initial attack. How exactly are we supposed to leave? The Kithira answered for him. We will provide transportation. However, our intervention comes with conditions that Lieutenant Commander Rourke's organization will find inconvenient. Rourke closed his eyes in resignation. They know about the Black Ops program. They know about the hybrid technology, the unauthorized raids, everything. Is that bad? Carlos asked, looking between the adults with the sharp intuition that children often display. It means the shadow war between humans and the hegemony is about to become very public, Rourke replied. And the Kithira are going to make sure both sides follow their rules from now on. The reactor chamber filled with a soft, violet light as something materialized in the space before them. It was clearly a transportation device, but its design followed principles that human engineering had never conceived. Crystalline structures flowed, like water, while maintaining perfect geometric patterns, creating doorway that seemed to exist in more dimensions than the eye could properly process. Children first, the Kithira voice instructed. They will be returned to human space unharmed. The adults will accompany us for debriefing. Jessica Kim stepped toward the portal with the courage that had sustained her through this entire ordeal. Will we see our families again? She asked. Yes, young one. Your family survived the initial attack and are currently in protective custody aboard our vessels. They will be reunited with you shortly. The relief that washed over the children's faces was heartbreaking. They had been so brave, so strong, but they were still just kids who wanted their parents. One by one, they stepped through the portal, their forms dissolving into streams of light before reforming on the other side. Marcus, Dr. Williams, and Rourke were left alone in the failing reactor chamber. Around them, containment warnings flashed with increasing urgency as the magnetic fields holding stellar fire began to decay. What happens to us? Dr. Williams asked. Rourke shouldered his pack, his expression resigned but determined. We face the consequences of our actions. The Kithira don't tolerate unauthorized warfare, but they also don't tolerate the enslavement of children. It should be educational. Marcus took one last look at the reactor chamber that had saved their lives through pure audacity and human stubbornness. In 40 minutes, this entire section of space would be bathed in nuclear fire, a fitting end to a station that had refused to surrender its children to alien predators. After you, he said, gesturing toward the portal. As they stepped through the Kithira transportation device, Marcus couldn't help but think that this was just the beginning. The galaxy had just learned that humanity would go to extraordinary lengths to protect its young, and that there were forces in the universe that wouldn't tolerate the strong preying upon the weak. The station's reactor chamber fell silent behind them, counting down to an explosion that would be visible from 3-star systems away, a beacon announcing that the rules of engagement had permanently changed. The Alphas had come for the Cubs and found something they hadn't expected, a species that would rather destroy everything than surrender its children, and ancient guardians who enforced laws older than most civilizations. Neither the hegemony nor humanity would ever be quite the same. The inside of the Kithira vessel defied every principle of design that Marcus had ever encountered. Corridors flowed like rivers of light through spaces that seemed larger than the ship's exterior dimensions should have allowed. The walls themselves were alive with information, displaying data streams and languages he couldn't read, but somehow understood the meaning of. The 5 children moved through these impossible spaces with the adaptability of youth, their eyes wide with wonder rather than fear. They had been reunited with their surviving parents in a chamber that resembled a garden more than anything belonging on a starship. Dr. Williams walked beside them, her scientific mind clearly struggling to process what she was seeing. Marcus and Rourke followed behind, escorted by what appeared to be their Kithira host, a being that stood nearly 8 feet tall and seemed to be constructed from flowing crystal and contained starlight. It had introduced itself as Harmonizer Zephyl, a title that suggested function rather than rank in ways the human military hierarchy couldn't quite grasp. Your species, Zephiel said, its voice emanating from everywhere and nowhere at once, presents a fascinating paradox. Primitive in technology, yet innovative in application. Fragmented in governance, yet unified in protection of offspring. The collective has been observing humanity for some time. How long? Rourke asked, his tactical mind clearly working to assess this new intelligence. Since your first radio transmissions reached our monitoring stations. Approximately 120 of your years. Zephiel paused, considering. We have been particularly interested in your development since first contact with the galactic community. Marcus felt a chill. You've been watching us for over a century, and you only intervene now. The collective maintains strict protocols regarding intervention in the affairs of developing species. We act only when galactic law is violated in ways that threaten systemic stability. The crystalline being turned what might have been its head toward Rourke. Your organization's activities have accelerated certain timelines. They entered a vast chamber that served as some kind of command center, its walls displaying real-time information about every ship, station, and settlement within a 50-light-year radius. Marcus could see human Navy vessels moving in distant systems, hegemony fleet positions, and dozens of other species' activities all tracked with casual omniscience. Jesus Christ, Dr. Williams whispered, staring at a display that showed the molecular structure of the station's reactor as it approached critical failure. You can monitor everything. Not everything, Zephiel corrected with what sounded like amusement, but most things that occur within our sphere of influence. The galaxy is smaller than most species believe. At the center of the chamber, a three-dimensional hologram showed the political structure of human space. Not just the official government territories, but the shadow networks, black operations programs, and clandestine alliances that supposedly existed only in classified files. Rourke stepped closer to the display, his face growing pale as he recognized the scope of what the Kithira knew. You've mapped our entire covert infrastructure. We map everything, Lieutenant Commander. It is necessary for maintaining galactic stability. Zephiel gestured to sections of the hologram that pulsed with red indicators. Your organization, the one you call Cerberus Initiative, has conducted 47 unauthorized raids against hegemony targets in the past 3 years. Each action was carefully documented. Unauthorized by whom? Rourke demanded, his composure finally cracking. The official government sits on Earth making diplomatic noises while children are enslaved on the frontier. Someone has to act. Indeed. And those actions have created the cascade of events that brought us to this moment. The hologram shifted, showing hegemony fleet movements over the past several months. Your raids forced the Vorthack to escalate their operations. They began targeting specific colonies with detailed intelligence rather than conducting random sweeps. Marcus studied the display, seeing the pattern. The intelligence leak, you know where it's coming from. We know precisely where it originates. New sections of the hologram highlighted, showing data pathways between Earth's colonial administration and hegemony intelligence networks. The leak was created deliberately by elements within your own government as part of a larger strategy. Dr. Williams stared at the display in horror. Our own people are giving the hegemony targets? What? To force a crisis that would justify direct military intervention, Zephiel explained. Certain factions within human leadership believe that a war with the hegemony is inevitable and desirable. They have been engineering incidents to create public support for such a conflict. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. The children, they were sacrificed deliberately. The raid on our station was supposed to succeed. Correct. The loss of children from a high-profile mining station would have provided the emotional catalyst necessary to overcome Earth's pacifist political factions. The Cerberus Initiative's interference disrupted these calculations. Rourke sank into a chair that materialized to catch him, his face a mask of betrayal and rage. We saved those kids from our own government as much as from the hegemony. In essence, yes. However, your methods have created new complications. The hologram shifted again, showing current fleet movements. The destruction of the hegemony raid fleet by collective forces will be interpreted by both sides as escalation. Earth's war faction will claim vindication, while the hegemony will see it as evidence of human collusion with ancient powers. Through the chamber's walls, They could see the explosion as the station's reactor finally achieved critical failure. The contained star at its heart escaped its magnetic prison and briefly outshone the system's primary. The blast wave would be visible for light years in every direction, a funeral pyre for a facility that had refused to surrender its children. What happens now? Marcus asked, watching the expanding sphere of destruction. Now, the collective implements new protocols. Zephael gestured, and the chamber's displays shifted to show legal documents in dozens of alien scripts. Treaty 77 Alpha contained contingency clauses that become active when signatory species engage in systematic violations of child protection accords. Those clauses are now in effect. Dr. Williams leaned forward, studying the alien text. What kind of contingencies? Direct collective oversight of all interactions between humanity and the Vorthak hegemony. Both species will operate under our supervision until they demonstrate compliance with galactic law. Rourke looked up sharply. You're putting us under alien supervision? Earth will never accept that. Earth's acceptance is not required, Zephael replied with calm finality. The collective's authority derives from agreements signed by your species when you were granted recognition as a galactic civilization. Those agreements include enforcement mechanisms. New displays showed the scope of what enforcement meant. Kythera ships materializing around Earth itself, alien observers appearing in human government facilities, and communication networks being monitored by technology that made human encryption obsolete. You're occupying us, Marcus said. We are providing supervision to prevent further violations. The distinction is important. Zephael turned toward them, its crystalline form seeming to focus despite having no visible eyes. Your species is not being conquered. You are being managed. The children's voices echoed from the garden chamber, where they were playing with their parents under the alien sun that the Kythera ship generated for their comfort. Their laughter was a reminder of what all this struggle was ultimately about, protecting the innocent from those who would exploit them. The hegemony will try to retaliate, Rourke said quietly. Their culture doesn't allow for this kind of humiliation to go unanswered. The hegemony will find retaliation difficult, Zephael replied. Their fleet commanders are currently explaining to their high command why an entire raid force vanished without trace. The official record will show that the human station self-destructed rather than surrender its children, taking the hegemony ships with it. Marcus understood the elegant psychology at work. You're giving both sides a face-saving narrative. The hegemony can claim they faced fanatic resistance rather than admit they were destroyed by superior force. Precisely. The hegemony values strength above all else. They will respect humans more for choosing mutual destruction over submission. This respect will make them more cautious about future raids. Dr. Williams was studying the legal documents with growing comprehension. But this supervision is not just about child protection, is it? You're using this as justification to control human expansion into space. Humanity's expansion has been causing instability throughout this region of the galaxy, Zephael confirmed. Your species adapts too quickly, innovates too rapidly, and refuses to accept established limitations. This causes other civilizations to feel threatened and defensive. So you're slowing us down, Marcus said. We are channeling your development in directions that promote stability rather than conflict. Consider it guidance rather than restriction. Rourke stood up, his expression hardening. And if we refuse this guidance? The chamber's displays shifted to show human colonies throughout the frontier, dozens of worlds where human children lived and played, unaware of the cosmic forces deciding their fate. The message was clear without being spoken. Cooperation was not optional when the stakes included the safety of an entire species' offspring. The choice is simple, Zephael said. Accept collective supervision and continue to develop as a galactic civilization under established protocols, or reject our authority and face the consequences of uncontrolled expansion in a universe full of species that view humanity as a threat. What kind of consequences? Dr. Williams asked, though her tone suggested she feared the answer. Economic isolation, technological quarantine, and eventual conflict with multiple galactic powers who have requested collective intervention to contain human expansion. The displays showed the scope of anti-human sentiment among other species. Your reputation for adaptability and aggression has made you many enemies. Marcus felt the weight of the decision pressing down on them. They were speaking for all of humanity, whether they wanted that responsibility or not. The 5 children playing in the next chamber represented billions more who would be affected by whatever choice was made here. There's another option, Zephael said, surprising them. The collective is prepared to offer humanity junior partnership status within our organization. This would provide protection, accelerated technological development, and full recognition as a responsible galactic civilization. At what cost? Rourke asked suspiciously. Complete transparency in government operations, abandonment of aggressive expansion policies, and integration of collective oversight personnel into all major decision-making bodies. In return, humanity would gain access to technologies that would advance your civilization by millennia within a single generation. The choice hung in the air like a suspended blade. Accept supervision and guidance that would fundamentally change what humanity was becoming, or refuse and face isolation that could end their expansion into the stars. In the garden chamber, little Carlos Santos was showing his mother a flower that grew in patterns of living light, his face bright with wonder at the impossible beauty of alien technology. Around him, the other children explored their new environment with the fearless curiosity that defined their species. Those children were the future that was being negotiated. Whatever choice was made here would determine the kind of galaxy they would inherit. One where humanity stood alone against hostile forces, or one where they were part of something larger and more magnificent than anything they could achieve in isolation. The weight of that responsibility settled over the small group of survivors who had started this day simply trying to protect 5 children from alien slavers. Now they found themselves at the center of a decision that would reshape the galaxy itself. The future of humanity hung in the balance, and the clock was ticking. 3 months later, Marcus Chun stood on the observation deck of the orbital facility that had once been Luna Station, watching Earth turn slowly beneath him. But this wasn't the same Earth he had left behind when he'd taken the mining job on Kepler 442b. This was a world transformed by the presence of crystalline towers that rose from every major city, their alien architecture somehow harmonizing with human buildings in ways that should have been impossible. The integration had been remarkably smooth, considering they were essentially being absorbed into a galactic civilization that operated on principles humanity was only beginning to understand. The Kythera had kept their word. Technological advancement had accelerated beyond all imagination, but it came with oversight that penetrated every aspect of human society. Still having second thoughts? Dr. Sarah Williams asked, joining him at the viewing wall. She wore the adaptive clothing that had become standard issue for all humans working with collective technology, garments that adjusted themselves to environmental conditions and could interface directly with alien systems. Every day, Marcus replied honestly, sometimes I wonder if we made the right choice. As opposed to facing a galaxy full of enemies who wanted to quarantine or destroy us. Sarah shook her head. I've seen the projections, Marcus. Without collective protection, humanity would have been extinct within 50 years. Through the station's transparent aluminum windows, they could see the construction of humanity's first true interstellar vessel. Not the primitive fusion drive ships that had carried them to nearby systems, but something that could cross galactic distances in weeks rather than decades. The ship was a hybrid of human engineering principles and collective technology, crewed by volunteers who would establish humanity's first embassy to the galactic core worlds. The children are adapting well, Sarah continued, gesturing toward a section of the station where Earth's first xenological academy was training young humans in the skills necessary for galactic citizenship. Jessica Kim is already showing aptitude for dimensional mathematics that her instructors find remarkable. Marcus smiled at the mention of Jessica. The girl who had shown such courage during their ordeal on the mining station had become something of a celebrity since their rescue. Her calm competence during the crisis had impressed the Kythera, and she was now part of a program designed to prepare human youth for leadership roles in the new galactic order. Any word from Rourke? Marcus asked. Sarah's expression darkened slightly. He's still in debriefing with collective intelligence. The Cerberus Initiative had more black projects than anyone realized. The Kythera are being very thorough in their investigation. The shadow war between humanity and the hegemony had indeed ended, but not through victory by either side. Instead, both species found themselves subject to the same oversight, with their conflicts mediated by alien judges who had been maintaining galactic peace for millennia. The hegemony's child-hunting raids had stopped completely, while humanity's unauthorized military operations were being systematically dismantled. Contact from the surface announced the station's AI, which now spoke with an accent that somehow managed to sound both human and utterly alien. Director Chun has a priority communication from the Collective Council. Marcus straightened. His new position as Director of Human Integration carried responsibilities he was still learning to navigate. The call would likely concern the latest batch of reports from human colonies throughout the frontier, all of which now operated under collective supervision. Put it through, he said. The chamber filled with the now familiar presence of Harmonizer Zephyl, though this time the Kythera appeared as a holographic projection rather than in person. The crystalline being's form seemed more solid now, as if their continued interaction was allowing it to better manifest in human-perceptible space. Director Chun, Dr. Williams, Zephyl greeted them. I trust you are adjusting well to your new responsibilities. As well as can be expected, Marcus replied diplomatically. Though I have to admit, governing a species that suddenly become junior partners in a galactic civilization is challenging. Indeed. Which brings me to the purpose of this communication. The space around them shifted, displaying a three-dimensional map of human space that now extended far beyond what had been possible with their primitive technology. The Collective Council has approved humanity's petition for expanded settlement rights. Sarah stepped forward, studying the map with professional interest. These regions were previously restricted to us. What changed? Your species has demonstrated remarkable adaptability to collective oversight. More importantly, you have shown a willingness to modify your expansionist tendencies in ways that promote stability rather than conflict. New areas of the map highlighted in blue, showing vast regions of space opening to human exploration. Additionally, several council members have expressed interest in studying human innovation techniques. Marcus felt a surge of pride, despite his reservations about their situation. Humanity might be under alien supervision, but they were earning respect through their actions. What's the catch? Each new colony must be established in partnership with at least one other council species. Humanity will no longer expand in isolation, but as part of integrated communities that include multiple galactic civilizations. The implications were staggering. Instead of human colonies scattered across space, they would be building multicultural worlds where different species work together from the ground up. It would change the very nature of what it meant to be human. The first partnership has already been arranged. Zephyl continued. The Astery Collective has requested human collaboration in establishing a research colony in the Vale Nebula. They are particularly interested in human approaches to adaptive engineering. Dr. Williams's eyes lit up with excitement. The Astery are one of the most advanced species in the Council. Working with them would advance our understanding of xenobiology by centuries. And the children from a mining station? Marcus asked. What about them? They have been invited to participate in the colony project as part of the youth integration program. Their experiences during the hegemony raid have given them unique perspectives that both species find valuable. Marcus thought about Carlos Santos, now 11 years old and already fluent in 3 alien languages. The boy had nightmares about the raid for weeks after their rescue, but he had also developed an uncanny ability to understand the motivations and thought patterns of different species. His trauma had become a strange kind of gift. There is one additional matter, Zephyl said, its tone becoming more formal. The investigation into the Cerberus initiative has revealed information that requires your attention. The chamber's displays shifted to show classified documents that Marcus recognized from his old military days. Personnel files, operational records, and budget allocations for projects that weren't supposed to exist. Lieutenant Commander Rourke's organization was larger and more sophisticated than initial reports indicated, Zephyl explained. They had successfully reverse-engineered significant amounts of hegemony technology and were developing capabilities that could have destabilized the entire galactic balance of power. Is that why you intervened? Sarah asked. Not just to protect the children, but to prevent humanity from becoming a threat. The children were the immediate concern, Zephyl replied. But, yes, humanity's rapid technological development was approaching a threshold that would have required more direct intervention. The Cerberus Initiative's hybrid technologies were only a few breakthroughs away from achieving parity with Council-level capabilities. Marcus felt a chill. You're saying we were about to become powerful enough to be considered a real threat. You were about to become powerful enough to destroy yourselves and take significant portions of the galaxy with you, Zephiel corrected. Human innovation paired with captured alien technology and, guided by military minds, tends toward exponential escalation. The collective has seen this pattern before. What happened to the other species that followed this path? Dr. Williams asked, though her tone suggested she feared the answer. They no longer exist. The simple statement hung in the air like a death sentence. Marcus understood now why the Kythera had moved so decisively. They hadn't just been protecting the children or enforcing galactic law. They had been preventing humanity from joining the ranks of extinct civilizations that had destroyed themselves through unchecked technological development. But we chose differently, Marcus said slowly. You chose to accept guidance rather than demand independence. This makes humanity unique among the species we have encountered at this developmental stage. Most civilizations that achieve rapid technological advancement become too proud to accept oversight. And humanity's humility comes from our willingness to sacrifice everything to protect our children, Sarah realized. Indeed, a species that values its offspring above its own pride is one that can be trusted with galactic-level responsibility. Zephiel's form seemed to brighten slightly. The Council has decided to accelerate humanity's integration timeline as a result. New displays showed the scope of what acceleration meant. Access to technologies that would terraform worlds in decades rather than centuries. Medical advances that would eliminate aging and most diseases. Energy systems that could power entire civilizations. Transportation networks that would make the galaxy as accessible as Earth's continents once were. There is, however, one final test, Zephiel said. Marcus tensed. What kind of test? The Vorthac hegemony has requested a formal meeting to negotiate new treaties regarding territorial boundaries and trade rights. They wish to deal with humanity directly, as equals, rather than through collective mediation. The hegemony wants to negotiate with us. Sarah sounded incredulous. After what happened? Precisely because of what happened. Your species' willingness to destroy an entire facility rather than surrender children has earned their respect. They now view humans as worthy opponents rather than primitive prey. Marcus understood the significance. In the hegemony's culture, being considered a worthy opponent was the highest form of recognition. They were offering humanity a chance to establish direct diplomatic relations on an equal footing. The test is whether humanity can negotiate from a position of strength while maintaining the values that led to collective intervention, Zephiel explained. Can you protect your interests without resorting to the aggression that nearly destroyed you? And if we fail, then the accelerated integration timeline will be suspended, and humanity will remain under direct collective supervision until you develop the necessary diplomatic maturity. The weight of the decision was overwhelming. They had fought so hard to protect 5 children from alien slavers, and now that same protective instinct was being tested on a galactic stage. Could humanity maintain its fierce determination to protect its own while also learning to coexist peacefully with species that operated by completely different moral codes? Through the station's windows, Marcus could see Earth turning peacefully beneath its new alien guardians. Children played in parks shadowed by crystalline towers, while their parents worked alongside beings from distant stars to build a future no human had ever imagined possible. When do the negotiations begin? Marcus asked. In 2 weeks. The meeting will be held on the neutral station at Alpha Centauri, with collective observers present to ensure compliance with galactic law. Zephiel paused. You'll be leading the human delegation, Director Chun. Marcus felt the familiar weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Once again, he found himself tasked with protecting humanity's children, not from immediate physical threat this time, but from the long-term consequences of diplomatic failure. I'll need a good team, he said. Dr. Williams has been approved as your scientific advisor. Lieutenant Commander Rourke will serve as military attaché, assuming his debriefing concludes satisfactorily. And the Council has made one additional request, which is they want Jessica Kim to attend as a youth representative. Her unique experiences and natural diplomatic instinct have impressed our observers. Marcus smiled for the first time in weeks. The girl who had shown such courage in the reactor chamber would now help determine humanity's future among the stars. There was a poetic justice to it that appealed to his sense of symmetry. The Alphas stormed the station for their cubs, he said quietly, remembering Rourke's words about the hegemony's motivations. But they found something they didn't expect. Indeed, Zephiel agreed. They found a species that would rather die than abandon its young. And, in doing so, they discovered that humanity was worthy of respect rather than exploitation. Now you must prove that respect was justified. As the Harmonizer's projection faded, Marcus stood alone with Sarah, watching Earth turn beneath alien skies. In 2 weeks, they would sit across a negotiating table from the very species that had tried to enslave their children. The outcome of those talks would determine whether humanity's future lay in continued growth and expansion or in comfortable stagnation under alien oversight. But Marcus felt confident about their chances. Any species that produced children brave enough to walk into alien portals, adults willing to hide in reactor cores, and operatives dedicated enough to sacrifice their careers for 5 kids they barely knew, that species had the strength to navigate whatever challenges the galaxy might present. Humanity had passed its first test by refusing to surrender its children. Now came the harder test, learning to thrive without losing the values that had earned them a place among the stars. The future was uncertain, but for the first time since the mining station's destruction, Marcus Chun believed it would be a future worth fighting for.